c'est bien.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished speakers, colleagues, and friends. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us today, both in person here in Oslo and virtually for this open forum session on catalyzing equitable AI impact, the role of international cooperation. This session is like a precursor to the AI Impact Summit that India will be hosting in February next year. And this is the AI Impact Summit will be held on 19th and 20th of February 2026. The summit aims to forge collective pathways towards inclusive development-oriented AI, grounded in the overarching theme, as recently articulated by our Honorable Prime Minister, people, planet, and progress. The summit that we are working on will focus on all these three themes: impact on people, impact on planet, and impact on economic growth and progress. We are grateful to the Internet Governance Forum and the Government of Norway for making this session possible and for their continued commitment to inclusive and open dialogue on the governance of emerging technologies. Allow me to briefly introduce our speakers. The session will be moderated by my colleague and friend from France, Henri Verdier. We'll have Her Excellency Sina Lawson, Minister for Digital Economy and Transformation of Togo. We'll have Mr. Thomas Lamonskos, Deputy Secretary General of the ITU, who will be joining virtually. Mr. Amandeep Singh Gill, the UN Tech Envoy Under Secretary General from the United Nations. Then we'll have Yoichi Eida, Special Policy Advisor to the Ministry of Information and Communications from Government of Japan. He has been like a firm supporter of us at GPay also. Then we will have Dr. Maria Grazia Sgrani, CEO from the Social and Human Sciences Sector, UNESCO. UNESCO also has been a key partner with us in our AI journey. Then Audrey Plonk, Deputy Director STI OECD, will be joining virtually. Welcome, Audrey, and again, a key stakeholder and a partner at the GPay forums. Then we have Ms. Andrea A. Jacobs, AI Focal Point from Antigua, Barbuda, who is joining virtually. And our colleague from India, Sharat Sharma, founder of iSpirit, is also joining virtually. Now, it's my pleasure to hand over to Ambassador Henri Verdier, France's Ambassador for Digital Affairs, who not only agreed to moderate today's session, but has also helped in curating it and shaping the very conception of this session. With that, I'm pleased to hand over to Ambassador Verdier to guide the session forward.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Wow, that's a very difficult task I did accept, because I'm supposed, so as you can see, we have a brilliant set of speakers and brilliant minds. Most of them are friends, and I have the difficult task to be sure that all the 9 speakers will speak, and will speak briefly, and will answer to a lot of important questions. And that's the second point. We will, during 1.5 hours, speak about a very important topic. I won't summarize, because you will do, but in one sentence: innovation is not always a progress. And progress is not always for everyone. And the question is, with this impressive evolution of AI, how can we be sure that it will benefit to everyone, including the emerging economies and the South, that I don't call global, but the vast majority of humankind? So that's the question today. As Abhishek said, we are meeting here between 2 important summits of head of states: the Paris AI Action Summit, that was organized in last February, and the Delhi AI Impact Summit that will be organized next February. I just want to say that there are very important UN tracks regarding AI governance and ethics of AI, and they are of the utmost importance. But it is worth, in between those tracks, to have some meetings of head of states and to see that each of them can put the emphasis of one important aspect of this broad question. So, for example, the first one in Bletchley Park was dedicated to existential risk, and that was great. In Paris, we did speak a bit more about innovation, governance, and environmental impacts. I feel that in Delhi, it will be more focused on development, on inclusion of, and benefit for everyone. And that's a great story, and all the rest of the year, we are working within the different UN processes. So we'll start. So we'll try to address 3 questions in 19 minutes. First, to speak a bit about this AI divide from let's say, global south today perspective. Then what can the multilateral and multi-stakeholder cooperation give to us? And then can we define together actionable pathway for inclusive AI ecosystem? And I start with the most difficult part of the debate. I will ask to each speaker, if possible in 2 minutes, to tell us from your position, your region, your responsibilities, what is the most pressing structural or technological barrier that hinders equitable AI adoption, and why does it matter for global AI system? And if you agree, Your Excellency, Minister Lawson, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Verdier. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's a very important question because from our perspective, when we think of AI, we view it as a tool. And so we say three things. Three things are going to hinder AI development in Togo or in Africa or the global south, which is, from our perspective, it's going to be the lack of infrastructure. So that's number one. The second is that we need to better train our people, so I would say skills. And the third one is data set, the lack of availability of these data sets. In terms of infrastructure, we think there is almost, we're still struggling with connectivity, with reliable electricity. As you know, we won't have access to GPUs or data centers. So when we think about how to better include the Global South in these conversations, we need to think about how to fund this infrastructure. Which types of business models do we need to support in order for this infrastructure to fill this gap? So that's number one. But number two is that when you say that AI is important, it has to be, we need to think of it as a human-centric tool. And so every time from, African perspective, when we think about artificial intelligence, we think that it needs to be used to solve our problems. So defining the problem definition, requires skills. Right now on the African continent, we're facing a major challenge, which is that we have less and less kids that choose to study math and science, And with that in mind, when we talk about skills, we know that we need to address the education challenge, which is a huge one. And then the third thing I say is data sets. For example, during the pandemic, when Togo used artificial intelligence, we used satellite imagery, so that didn't require us to have a lot of data within the country, and we also used mobile telcos metadata. But one thing that needs to be said is that if digital transformation is a challenge, it also means that a lot of our countries don't have the data that they would need on top of which they would apply algorithms. So building these data sets, which are hundreds or tens of projects that we need to develop, is also something we need to look into in order to be relevant. And why is it important to be relevant is that AI is a great tool, that's number one. Number two is that if we are not part of the conversation, we won't exist in the future. One fear that we have is that imagine the world 20 years from now, and if AI represents the totality of knowledge, if you're not part of this knowledge, someone coming from, I don't know which planet 20 years from now, looking at the data on the platform, if we don't exist on this platform, it will mean that we don't exist at all. So it's extremely relevant that we be part of this because it's going to define whether we get to even exist or not.
Thank you, Minister. Abhishek?
Yeah, I kind of echo the views of Her Excellency, like the three key ingredients for any AI application or model are infrastructure, compute mainly, and talent, skills, and data sets. In fact, when we were designing our AI strategy, we realized that on skills, we're pretty up the ladder because we are known as the tech capital of the world. Our engineers are part of almost every major initiative in digital transformation. Within India also, we have implemented India Stack and digital public infrastructure. So on talent skills, we are pretty okay. But when it came to availability of compute infrastructure and data sets, we had a lot of work to do. So India AI mission that we are implementing focuses a lot in enabling compute available. And what we have done is that we don't have as many GPUs as the US has or the big tech companies have, but we have made around 50,000 GPUs available at a very low cost, less than $1 a GPU per hour, which is available to Indian researchers, academicians, startups, so that they can start training models, they can do inferencing, they can build applications in healthcare, agriculture, education, and other sectors. So that's one initiative that we have taken to address the gap in compute infrastructure. The other is about data sets. How do we ensure that data sets on both the public and the private sector across domains, across sectors are made available? For that also, we built a platform called AI Kosh, in which we are incentivizing all key stakeholders to contribute to data sets that are AI ready, that are shareable through APIs, which can be used by developers and by entrepreneurs to build applications. When we look at adoption of AI globally, we do believe that these bottlenecks are there across. In fact, most of the AI today is controlled by a few companies in a few countries. Our focus, the Impact Summit that we will be hosting next year, will be on how do we democratize access to AI compute, data sets, algorithms? How do we ensure that the benefits of AI are used for solving societal problems in healthcare, in agriculture, in solving problems of science and maths education? How do we address the lack of teachers who are there? How do we make education available in mother tongue? So language becomes a very, very important component. What we are working in India through a project called Bhashini, which is a natural language processing, is that enabling various services in all Indian languages and mainly through voice. So voice-based LLM is our focus area, and when we are able to offer services through a voice command in the mother tongue, then we'll really be able to empower millions of people who are out of the digital ecosystem. And when that happens, it results in a lot of benefits in yield, in productivity, in benefits. So I would say that global consensus on focusing on democratizing AI, making the global south part of the conversations, ensuring that the compute, the data sets are available, algorithms are shared, applications are shared, will go a long way in ensuring that the whole world becomes a key stakeholder in AI conversations and not just ends up being AI users of solutions provided by a few companies.
Thank you very much. Friends, before giving you the floor, Yoshi-san, we know that Amandeep Singh and Thomas have to leave earlier because you have other engagements. So maybe I will pass the floor to Amandeep and then to Thomas. And maybe you can be a bit longer because we'll continue the conversation without you. So maybe, Amandeep, if you can also tell us, so why does this topic matters and what can the multilateral and multi-stakeholder system provide as solutions? So you have 4 minutes or 5.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
And Thomas, same there.
And thank you to you and to Abhishek for getting us together. I think there's strong momentum coming out of the Paris AI Action Summit, going into the summit to be hosted by India. The focus on AI action, AI impact is an important turn in the conversation. And I agree with you that, of course, there are more inclusive processes and they have their role. I'll come back to that in a bit. But engaging leaders on a regular basis is important. Leaders everywhere are talking about AI, they're acting on the AI-related challenges, and it's good to get them together in this summit format. Now, the agenda which Abhishek has described is very much welcome. I think on top of the existing digital divide, we have a looming AI divide. All of Africa, less than 1,000 GPUs, less than 1% of the data center capacity. Most of the data sets, language data sets, are in 6 or 7 languages. The cultural context is also very specific, North American, Western Europe. And we already see in many parts of the world where there are efforts, for example, in Japan, in the Gulf, in many other parts of the world, to find more contextually relevant data sets, find more use cases that are appropriate for that context. And Sina spoke about those use cases. I think we have to have this global dynamic and a local dynamic, without which we cannot really democratize the opportunity and advance progress on the sustainable development goals. Just a moment to reflect on how this connects with the ongoing work at the UN. Of course, you will hear from the ITU and the UNESCO on their long-standing work on AI issues, the AI for Good Summit, the AI ethics framework. But we took a decisive turn last year when the Global Digital Compact was adopted. It's the reflection of the high-level advisory body on AI, and Sharad is here. He was a distinguished member, landed in those negotiations and led to key decisions. So one decision was on setting up an international independent scientific panel. We need those regular scientific assessments. It's a fast-moving technology. It's going to impact on various sectors, employment, for example, the environment, that aspect was mentioned. So we need regular assessments based on a global perspective, not the perspective of a region or a few companies, but a global scientific perspective. Alongside that, we need a regular global dialogue on AI governance within the United Nations. So the summits are there. They are important moments for leaders to engage, but on a sustained basis, on an inclusive basis, we need that dialogue so we can learn from each other. The experience of the EU with the AI Act, what's working, what's not working, China's experience with interim measures on Gen AI, other approaches, need to see what works, what doesn't work, and also ground all this effort in our shared norms, international law, the international human rights treaties, the SDGs, and other commitments on environment, on gender, and so on. So that dialogue is crucial. And then we need to work on AI capacity building. I mentioned the AI divide. The GDC asked the SG to come back with a report on innovative financing options for AI capacity building. That draft has been finalized based on nearly 200 consultations, a lot of work across the UN system. And this will be presented, the report will be presented in September. It'll allow governments and other actors, philanthropies, private sector, to consider all these aspects of compute, data, talent development, the shareable, open use cases, and how to invest in those so that the effort, for example, launched in Paris, Current AI, or the efforts recently embarked on by G7 countries, they can be put into a globally cohesive, impactful framework. And finally, there's work on standards. I'm sure Thomas will go into that. There was a decision in the GDC in the sense of we should have a regular engagement, a clearinghouse kind of engagement on standards. We build up those standards into a more coherent, more impactful set of soft regulation. So the AI safety institutes are there, started at Bletchley Park, taken forward in different ways, now being rebranded. I'm sure India has done some thinking on that. There is aspect of children's safety, which is being thought about. So how do we build standards in these various areas and come together on a regular basis, again, for the industry to benefit and for the tech community to build this technology in a trusted way. So I'm sorry I have to leave, but I leave you with these thoughts. And we are looking forward to the February AI Summit, and we will support the summit organizers, the co-hosts, going forward, just as we did in Paris. Thank you.
Thank you, Amandeep. So I'm going to... Are you in Geneva, Thomas? We miss you.
Thank you very much, Henry. Yes, I just unmuted myself. So indeed, great to join from Geneva. Regretfully, I cannot be in Norway because of our council is ongoing. So our annual council, but really great to see you there. And goodbye, Amandeep, I think.
Please, please. Amandip did leave without his phone, so there is a trouble on the scene.
Okay.
But we are listening to you. And again, regarding the two questions, the importance of equitable AI, and what can we do, mentioning that the ITU did organize for a long time the AI for Good initiative, and you have quite an experience on it.
So thank you very much, Nuri. And indeed, it's a pleasure to be joining this panel, even this time virtually, especially as we had a very great presence and collaboration with you for the AI Action Summit in France. And indeed, where we together launched a coalition for sustainable AI, as you mentioned, this sustainability being key part of that conversation in Paris. And indeed, we're now looking forward to the AI Impact Summit in India, of course, next February. And again, we also, we're coming there not for the first time. Just last year we had, as part of our, on the sidelines of our World Organization Assembly, we had a, related but also independent two important events here for Good Impact India, as well as a first AI Standards Summit. And I think Amandip mentioned how important is the standards collaboration there. So indeed, there's a great to build a network together with you and make sure that this dialogue continues to be inclusive. So now back to this specific question here about the gaps. And indeed, I think the three gaps are already quite a few people mentioned. So infrastructure, and I would add finance, because to kind of help. To have infrastructure there, we need the finance, in the end of the day. And I think here, indeed, we still have a huge gaps, not only in the basic connectivity, but also in the kind of specific data infrastructure. When we look about data centers, the whole Africa has around 1.8% the global data centers, as at the same time when having more than 18% of the global population. So disparities are pretty big. Of course, skills were mentioned in data sets as well as part of that equation. I would like to add a few more elements and maybe to explore, of course, is innovative capabilities, innovation. If you look at the patents, for example, a rough measure how we look at innovation, you see the two countries joined together really dominate that area, and then they're not leaving a lot of percentages to us. So how do we generate that innovativeness, innovation coming from other areas? And that means how we generate those companies that could also do that. Then trust, so the trust gap, so because around 60% of the people around the world, have issues with AI trust. So that is not necessarily unique to the, let's say, developing versus developed countries, or whichever way we look, but that is an issue around the world. The other thing that I think from our perspective is also important is a policy gap and a policy barrier. Because I think a lot of those things, they need the solid policies. And I think to create the solid policies is also interrelated. We need policymakers to understand whether they're regulating or governing. So I think this is very interrelated topic. And of course, this is a high correlation between having infrastructure and skills in the country and having policies there as well. So our surveys of the countries have demonstrated that actually, there's a big policy gap. Still around 55% of the countries say they don't have a policy, they don't have the right policies or strategies in place. 85% of the countries don't have regulatory environments, so it's kind of more detailed. And I think without that, it's difficult to also address other barriers there. So I think that's why it is also important. What's however, for me, I find it very intriguing, what I would call maybe optimism divide. An optimism divide is inversely related to everything what I said now. If you look at the recent studies, actually, the people in Europe and other developed countries are very skeptical about AI. Or not skeptical, they're more fearful. They say, look, AI will come and take our jobs. Around 70% are actually fearful that AI may take their jobs. Whereas when you look in the global south, it's opposite. 70% of the people say, actually, AI may help us, it may help develop our economies, and then 2/3 of the people, actually look forward to the applications of health and agriculture and other areas. So I think that's very interesting, So that means for me that if we are managing to bridge other gaps, infrastructure, skills, innovation, we actually have a ready-made, ready-made population and talent pools, and ready-made consumer, areas, if you will, as well, that are ready to take up the AI and really use in their daily lives and allow us to kind of drive the economic and social development there. Now, what we're doing from the ITU side and the broader UN side, and I think complementing what Amandip was already saying about some of the initiatives there. And of course, now is a crucial moment. Those of you who follow and others of us who follow AI so-called modalities resolutions, implementation of Global Digital Compact, and installing specific modalities, including International Scientific Panel on AI and Global AI Governance Dialogue. I know that conversation is continuing in New York on this, but of course we're not starting from a blank sheet of paper. You know, the UN and ITU has done quite a bit already before to help create that AI governance fabric, if you will. So as Henri, as you rightly mentioned, we have our AI for Good global summit that's running since 2017 already. You know, that brings all the stakeholders together. Last year we had the first AI Governance Day. They brought around 70 countries together to exchange views on the governance as well. And of course, just in a couple of weeks, actually, 8th to 11th of July, we're looking at the next AI for Good global summit with on the second Governance Day on the 10th of July, where we're expecting significantly more policymakers than last year, including a few heads of state there as well. So the platform, there is a platform to build on, and of course we're very happy that in the AI modalities resolution discussions, the AI for Good Global Summit is recognized as at least a potential venue, hopefully for the first global dialogue on AI governance that was coming out of the Global Digital Compact. The other piece is, of course, to bring everyone on board these standards, you know, because I think to spread innovation, standards is a key tool to spread innovation, so that we don't just innovate, but we can apply the innovation around the world in an interoperable, affordable way. So, of course, in this regard, ITU is working. We have our own suite of AI standards, more than 400 of them. But at the same time, we're working with partners within what is called World Standards Corporation, key partners there, International Technical Commission, IC, International Standardization Organization, ISO, where we bring the standards community on AI together. Again, last year, as I mentioned already, we had the first AI Standards Summit in New Delhi, India. Looking forward in December to our second AI Standards Summit, you know, and then during the AI for Good, 11th of July, we'll have AI Standards Exchange also to bring all the relevant organizations together to progress the joint up work on AI standards. So they are relevant, they're interoperable, they can benefit everyone there. Skills, of course, this is a very broad range of things we working to do. So, of course, we have a AI Skills Coalition, our most recent, flagship initiative with 50 partners joining us, where we aim by end of this year to have at least 10,000 people trained in AI skills in different sets of courses, through different sets of courses. But we have other long-standing parts of initiatives that bring thousands of people around the world, from our innovation factory, AI innovation factory for startups that they participate in pitching competitions, to our AI machine learning challenges, to engineers around the world, and we have a lot of interest from developing countries in that, all these initiatives show us that there is a really strong talent pools around the world. They just need to be tapped. And of course, and then just the last maybe initiative of all these flagship initiatives I wanted to mention is Digital Infrastructure Investment Initiative that we have with 7 DFIs, development finance institutions, launched in the Brazilian G20, where we try to bridge general digital infrastructure gap with assessed at 1.6 trillion, but within that, of course, AI infrastructure. And of course, in just over the week, just a week, we'll have Financing for Development conference in Sevilla, Spain, where we also go for UN Financing for Development 4th conference, where we're going with that flagship initiative, and we're looking how to also engage stakeholders around digital infrastructure investment. So as inclusiveness, I think maybe looking back, so what is also key is inclusivity, around the world. And I mentioned that in our AI for Good last year, we had around 70 policymakers, and some of them said it was the first time when they were in the AI governance discussion. And I think that is very important, because I think it's important that those discussions don't just, involve the usual suspects, the countries that already have the capabilities and capacities, but really involve everyone from the get-go. And I think great to see AI impact, format, going to different parts of the world. We had a very strong participation in developing countries in Geneva. Last year we had, as I mentioned, AI for Good Impact Summit in India. We're looking forward later this year, AI for Good Impact Summit for Africa in Cape Town. So we're really also trying to bridge that inclusivity gap and make sure that this reaches everyone, both in terms of skills, infrastructure, but also importantly, policy discussions that enable all. So I'll stop there, Henri, and I'll back over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for making time within a big and a huge agenda. So now I will come back to my initial schedule, but we are changing slightly. so I will try to mix the two questions, Yoshi-san and the other speakers. So first, what is, from your perspective, the main barrier against the equitable adoption of AI? And what can we do in the multi-stakeholder cooperation framework? I observe a tendency to a kind of consensus with the three gaps, but I feel that we are not going far enough. And I was thinking, listening to all of you, sadly, we have examples of great technologies that were not used for the best. Television could have been a brilliant tool for education and didn't become a real resource for education. Genetically modified organisms could have been a solution for agriculture in tropical eras, and didn't. So we know from history that sometimes there are brilliant innovations that don't turn enough into progresses. So collectively, we have to think further. And the position of Japan is very interesting.
Okay, thank you very much, Henri, and thank you very much, Abhishek, for the invitation. I try to be brief, but let me talk about the Japan situation before I talk about the international efforts. And if you look at the Japan, we have the very unique challenges of the rapidly aging society and also even the decreasing population. So we really need to make the full use of technology such as AI in our society to keep the energy and the liveliness of the society and the community. So from this perspective, the trust of the people in technology is the very, very important element, and also the skills and the literacy are also very important elements in order to make people use the technology without concern and in the very efficient way. Of course, we have a lot of problems as elaborated by the colleague from Togo, and also I envy Abhishek when you talk about the skills are okay for India. We have a lot of problems in computing resources and also the data set, and also the skills and the literacy of the people. But as I said in the beginning, the most urgent problem for Japan is how to make use of this technology to benefit the society, and the literacy and skill of people, and also the trust of the society in the technology is very, very important. That is why we enacted AI law at the end of the last month, which people call not AI regulation law, but AI promotion law. So the law is trying to push the AI usage in the society forward by generating and growing the people's trust and also the literacy and the skills. So education is very, very important for us. That requires the government the very radical transformation of the old system, not only in the education, but also the labor's reskilling or maybe the understanding of the people on technology. So a lot of things have to be done before the government. And also, I don't believe when we want to make use of the AI technology in the society, we have to use the technologies from abroad, across the borders. I don't believe, all requirements, all demands of Japanese people for AI can be fulfilled by the domestic technologies and domestic businesses. So that is why we need very much coherent and interoperable governance frameworks across the regions and across the countries, across the jurisdictions, so that we can make use of the AI models and the systems without concern when they come from the abroad. And that is why we are promoting the initiative called the Hiroshima Process, which encourage the AI companies to assess the risks and the challenges in their AI models and take appropriate measures, and also share the information, relevant information with the public very openly. And so by doing so, we believe we can foster the trust among people on this very powerful technology of AI, and people can make use of the technology without concern. So that is our approach, and these are our challenges. And in order to do that, we have to work not only with the government from around the world, but also with the stakeholders from businesses, civil society, and academia, all kind of communities, all together to achieve a type of co-governance which will bring a very safe, secure, and trustworthy AI ecosystem across the world. So that is what we are doing now, and I hope we share the same understanding with all colleagues here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yoshi. So I'm going to Maria Grazia. Before the meeting, you told me that we need also a technical strategy for inclusion. So maybe you, because there is this is too consensual, so we need new ideas.
It is consent. Merci, Henri. Seems like my microphone now is going on. So thanks a lot for the question. And actually I had to take note because it got more and more complex by the time we were talking about, and I would like to avoid being repetitive. And it's true. Perhaps, I mean, you said it before, like a complex problem needs to be unpacked and analyzed well in order to find suitable solution. And you ask what are the regions of the world? Well, UNESCO has 194 member states, so our territory is the world. And what are the sectors, and what do we do in different sectors? Well, we cover any sector, from culture to education to any other sector in our activities. So the question of the key barriers becomes one, in my mind, of systematizing the problem. That is the endowment. That was an issue that was already raised, the computability, the endowment of the infrastructure, the ability, so it's not only the physical infrastructure, but also the human capital infrastructure, the availability of the relevant skills. Let me add a point there. In order to work, live, thrive in what we can now call the AI era, of course, and we heard, we need to train, also Thomas mentioned that, more people in STEM, for instance, people that really deal with AI, build AI. But we also need to endow the population with the social-emotional skills that are needed in order to address the change, because let's not forget that, and this goes to the technical issue we were mentioning, that deploying AI in any environment, from public institutions to companies, entails non-negligible organizational changes, both in the tasks that people will need to do in their jobs, the very jobs that will be available, and those that will be built. So there are a number of components that go into that. It's not, let's say, one component. Perhaps the solution is in the mix. And why this relates also to the governance? Because you need to have, in order to have these assets around the table that allow you to leverage the opportunities that AI may offer, you really need to have the institutions. You need to have the legislation. All of you were mentioning legislation, for instance, initiatives that have been passing in your countries in order to address the AI transformation. And we also need to learn from each other. So that's exactly what UNESCO has been doing through what we call the readiness assessment methodology. That is an analysis, and for instance, now we're working with India to finalize theirs, something that gives you a picture of where the country is. It's not a ranking. So let's say perhaps the beauty of the inclusiveness of AI is that, between brackets, nobody has it right or wrong. There are good practices, and I emphasize good because the best is not there yet. Nobody has the solution to the problem. But there are good practices from everywhere in the world, and in this sense, the Global South does show, and again, I don't really like this name, but that's the way in which typically it's referred to, because there are different components and different aspects that need to be taken into account, and everybody can contribute to that. And perhaps the narrative has been going in a direction which is somewhat partial. We typically talk about inequalities in AI in developed versus developing world, let's remember, and this is something, for instance, that is very much on the table in the current discussion in the context of the G20, of the within countries inequalities. And you, Yoichi, underline one important, that is the generational one. It is not the same thing to deal with AI when you have a generation that an average age of the population that is relatively low, where it is relatively easy to endow the population with certain type of skills because they are closer to education, they are more receptive than when you have a population that is getting older. So there are a number of components that need to be around the table, and perhaps a basic understanding, and this is what Henri was referring to when we were talking before, and is that there is another typically sold kind of false legend that is that, including basically benefits only the included. Mm-hmm. Actually, what we know about AI is that if we have biased data, if we don't have the infrastructure there, if we don't have governance mechanism, if, for instance, a number of languages are not included, and so certain communities don't have their societal habits, contribution reflected in that, ultimately, the AI itself is performing worse. So it's not able to address, when you go in what it is called in the jargon, in the wild testing, it will perform worse. So it will actually generate systems that are not as performing or as fit for purpose as they should. So including bringing more actors around the table, as you mentioned, for instance, the multi-stakeholder, having better data, more representative data, including women, for instance, in the AI transformation, does not only benefit those that are included, but actually those that included. So ultimately, inclusive AI is actually very good businesses because it's more accessible and brings better benefits. Another component that we were mentioning is also about the companies, and this refers again to inclusiveness from a different perspective. Now we are talking about who is already in the game and who would like to enter the game, so to speak. So if we think about what is the constituency nowadays in AI, we see a number of very big corporations that typically are from a certain number of countries. Well, there are a number of startups that are aiming to scale up that are not really finding easy to do so. But why should be in our interest to let them do that? Because there is plenty of evidence that radical innovation, breakthrough innovations, tend to come from young and small entities. There is plenty of research about that. And so the issue is whether we only care about the AI for today, or we do care also about the AI for tomorrow, because unless we let these companies bloom, the likelihood that the payoffs from AI will be there also tomorrow, new types of AI, are less likely. And these all, nevertheless, has to happen within some guardrails, like the ones, for instance, foreseen in the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI. And I will close it there because we have seen again and again in history that what is technically feasible, it doesn't necessarily need being societally desirable. So perhaps we need to have a conversation about what we do not want AI to do, and let the rest bloom to address the many challenges that society is facing these days.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to our online friends, and maybe I will start with Audrey. The OECD is another important multilateral and multi-stakeholder body, and you have various initiatives, including hosting the GPI, that is our favorite project from France, because I did negotiate the beginning of the GPI 7 years ago. So do you think that we are in the good direction to be sure that we do include in this multilateral and multi-stakeholder conversation the developing countries and the needs of the developing countries?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and hi everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for organizing this really important discussion. So the short answer is yes. I think we're on an excellent track to being inclusive in the context of the Global Partnership on AI, which is no longer a hosted entity at the OECD. It's part of the OECD, which we're very pleased to have announced last year in India. at the summit of GPay. So with that, we hope that the expansion of GPay will be interesting to a large set of countries that are at a level of development in AI that they can come to the table and work on a set of different topics, many of which have been discussed here today. And so I think in terms of the question around where we see divides, I will try not to be redundant of things that others have said, but I do think there's some institutional divides and capacity divides in terms of the ability for countries to participate in certain activities. And I think that's where Tom has mentioned policy divides, and we do see a lot of effort, and I want to commend colleagues in UNESCO and across the UN system for their work as well to try to accelerate governments' efforts to develop policies and strategies to put AI central to government policy. But we see that there's still a lot of work to do there. For example, we maintain a database, the largest database of AI policy initiatives around the world, and we cover over 72 jurisdictions, but there's a lot of room for improvement and growth, but also learning from each other. And so not just collecting the information and data from countries about their efforts, but also finding ways to access and share that data that helps build capacity in other countries. So I think on the policy and institutional capacity of countries and governments to participate in the global dialogue, there's a lot of room for us to work collectively to bring others along. And GPay is a place where we are fully committed to doing that. I want to also say about the infrastructure piece, because many people have mentioned it, and it's exceedingly important, not just for AI development and deployment, but also for general digital transformation. And we see that there's, of course, a lot of opportunity there. And I just want to mention one project because it's new and not yet totally public, of a new methodology we're developing to measure compute availability in different countries. We're talking about that in the GPay context. For those of you who are at that table, but I think it will be really important that we put good empirical evidence behind some of the discussions that we're having at the political and policy level, so that we can actually, eventually move the needle on where things like investment is going and where business opportunities are moving. And so I want to also echo the reality of financial divides in terms of investment in AI and the ability, as other colleagues have said, for small and medium enterprises, which are, of course, the lifeblood of the economy, of the global economy, to engage in the AI world. And then I think in terms of the skills and education divide, I think these are different things, and we need to think more granularly about what we're trying to do with skills and with education. Everything from early education in STEM all the way through upskilling and training of workers and aging populations. And I think what we're seeing is targeted media literacy programs, targeted efforts to meet different populations within a country and across countries where they are, is extremely important, not just for their ability to adapt to AI coming into their lives, but also to generally adapt to digital transformation. And I think the more global cooperation and sharing of experiences that we can have in that regard, the better the outcomes will be in the long term. And I completely agree that we need to be thinking longer term, not just today and tomorrow, but where is our population, where our society is going to be in the next 10 to 20 to 30 years in using this technology. With that, I think I would say that finally we see in terms of culture and language, which many people mentioned, one important effort that we have at the OECD is our AI Observatory. You're probably all very familiar with it. And one of the big efforts there, in order to help contribute to a more multilingual, multicultural environment, is we're trying to make as much of that data available in multilingually as possible. And so, for example, if you go to the live data coverage on the observatory and you look at the media coverage of AI, you can see and read about what's happening in AI in many, many, many different languages. The same is true for the incident monitor that we've been building, where we've developed a methodology for classifying problems that happen in the ecosystem relating to AI systems. And there you can look in native language across different countries around the world. And so I think the more that we can cooperate both on the data side and on the policy side, the better picture that we're going to have of what's working and what's not working. And then finally, I think lastly, and I'll close with this in the interest of time, that the game changer in AI, particularly in the developing world, is going to be adoption and diffusion across different aspects of industries and society. And I think, and that's the case really for all countries, and everybody, even big countries, are grappling and challenged to how do we use this technology. So that's a shared experience that everyone is going through. It's how do we make ourselves more competitive, more productive by using these technologies. And I think that's a big opportunity around the various international tables, multilateral tables, to really work together to get the best possible outcomes for our population. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now we are going to Antigua and Barbuda and to ask to Andrea Jacobs, what's your view regarding this question?
Thank you. That's a very, very good question. And, you know, I've heard a lot of unpacking from different regions. And Antigua and Barbuda certainly sits with Africa on what was said. So the Caribbean and more broadly among small island developing states, the most pressing structural barrier to equitable AI adoption is the lack of robust digital infrastructure and institutional readiness. And this sentiment, dare I say, is echoed across the global South. And this includes unreliable connectivity, particularly in the rural areas and outer island areas. Then we have weak data ecosystems, which limit our ability to develop context-relevant AI. And then we would have limited regulatory and technical capacity to ensure safe, ethical, and inclusive AI use. On the technological side, there's a major imbalance. We are overwhelmingly consumers of AI technologies that are developed elsewhere. And oftentimes, our realities, languages, or priorities in mind, most of these companies don't bear this in mind. And as you know, the people who are the persons, or the companies rather, who makes the AI products, they might not think about people in the global South or even Black and brown people, dare I say, and that's where the biases come in. So the tools that we adopt are not built for us, and that poses a real risks. And then the question is, why would this matter, right? Why does this matter for the global South? Well, if these disparities continue to go unaddressed, global AI will continue to serve the few rather than the many, reinforcing existing power imbalances, embedding biases, and excluding billions from shaping the future of technology. And this is why in Antigua and Barbuda, we speak about having a seat at the table all the time, every time in these AI meetings, because the world needs to know that we are in an era where we are being left behind. The private companies are making these products. We're not getting our voices heard enough. We don't even have rules and regulations. We don't have good governance structures. We don't understand the ethics of AI, how it's going to impact people in the global South, and more importantly, Black and brown people like myself. And the situation is very, very real. And then we're moving into the context of AGI, which is the next level of AI. And we haven't even mastered narrow AI as yet. And we're moving forward towards general AI. So we need to be a part of the conversation, not just as recipients, but as equal partners in co-creating values, rules, and technologies that will define our shared digital future. And then lastly, for us in the Caribbean and somewhat in the global South, because I talk a lot to my partners in the global South, and we have this view. We need local infrastructure, talent development. We need culturally relevant innovation ecosystems, and we need stronger participation for countries in the global South. As long as we remain primarily consumers of the air products made elsewhere, without a seat at the design and decision-making table, we risk adopting tools that entrench inequality instead of empowering transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to our friend Sharad. Sharad, I don't see you so far. Again, same question about this AI divide and how can cooperation help to fix it?
Right. So let's look at digital divide first. Digital divide in some countries has been coming down quite rapidly. India is an example of that. And there are many lessons to learn from that. At the same time, we must realize that the AI divide is a very big problem, because we know that the first version of AI that we have is actually social media. Social media is entirely AI driven, right? And that is how the social media platforms ensure that we spend, increasing time on their platforms, year after year. Now, so the question, of course, is how have we done in dealing with these pernicious effects of AI diffusion in the world of social media? I would say we have done very poorly. What is the test? The test is, do these new systems change the balance of power between the citizen and the state in the favor of the state? Do these systems change the balance of the power between the consumer and the provider in the favor of the provider? The answer to that is yes. And therefore, ironically, we are in a session of internet governance. We have to go back and look at this and say, why has our current efforts of internet governance, especially when it comes to Web 2.0, failed? This situation is not getting better, it is getting worse. So if we have to make progress with AI, we have to first acknowledge that the last 10, 15 years are years of failure and not perpetuate the things that we have been doing, which have led to this failure. So what are those things? There are three that I like to point out based on the experience of India Stack that Abhishek mentioned early on. First is traditional regulation has to be replaced by techno-legal regulation. Our Prime Minister talked about it at the AI Summit in his brief speech there. This is absolutely essential. The old form of regulation can be gamed by the producers of digital services or AI services. They could do it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and they'll be able to do it as we move forward. So we have to bring in a new regulatory paradigm, and that is techno-legal. There's a lot of kind of learnings about that here in India, which are available to the rest of the world. The second is we have to change the nature of innovation. Innovation has to become an innovation that is built on public goods and private innovation. Because if you don't have public goods and the innovation is entirely in the realm of private sector, then as Andrea pointed out, the outcomes are going to be terrible. We will all be just consumers, not producers. India will have super teachers, will have super doctors, will have better medical devices, even our students will learn better. But the people who will provide those AI models to make it happen will not be from India. And the value capture of all this will not be in India. So this is a very serious problem that we are looking at. And therefore, we have to look at the innovation architecture itself. And the third, I don't know whether Amandeep is still there, but one of the big takeaways from the UN AI advisory body is that we have to create a new type of an infrastructure, a public infrastructure for data set sharing that is controlled and yet unlocks hidden data from companies and countries in a manner that they can control. And in the UN report, that is the recommendation number 6, Global Training Data Sharing Framework, and that is absolutely essential. India is in a very advanced form of building that out. And again, it was mentioned at the Paris AI Summit by our Prime Minister we call it DAY1. And why do we call it DAY1? Because it's about data empowerment and data protection. The two have to go hand in hand, and that requires fresh thinking as well. So I'll end here by simply saying more of the same is a recipe for disaster. We must acknowledge as a group of people that we have to make a new beginning. If we don't make a new beginning, just keep doing what we've been doing for the last 10, 15 years, we will not get good outcomes, good results. And then we will just be a talking shop, and we'll collect here again 5, 10 years from now and lament how little has changed from where we are today. So let's please make a fresh start. The Indian AI Impact Summit will attempt to bring these ideas to the table, and we are hoping that as you participate in that in February, you get infected by this spirit of making a fresh beginning and taking these new ideas into the realm, into the AI realm as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharad. So now I will reschedule everything regarding the end of this roundtable. We will focus to one question. I will ask this question to the 6 speakers, because Abhishek, you will conclude. And the question is quite simple. Can you share with us your suggestions for actionable pathway, concrete ideas to build really inclusive AI ecosystem? But I have to mention that when we started 1 hour ago, I did ask to every speaker to speak in 2 minutes. The only one that did respect the rules was Minister Lawson, because then I did change the rule because of Abhishek, Amandip, sorry, etc. So we give a bit more time to Minister Lawson, maybe 5 minutes, and I beg the other speakers to stay in 2 minutes because we would love to exchange a bit with the room, if possible. So question, concretely, actionable ideas, what can we do to progress in the field of inclusivity? Minister Lawson.
Thank you very much. So the first comment I'll make is that AI has to work for us. It means that we have to make sure that it is designed to solve our problems, our local problems. The instances where we used AI in Togo were to really solve our problem. Number one, it was to we used AI to prioritize beneficiaries for our financial aid programs. The second instance when we used AI, it was to design better network. We were deploying fiber networks, and we used AI to really build the itineraries in a way that the networks would be efficient. So I'm saying that because when we think of AI as a tool and we say, okay, it has to work for us, it also implies few other things. One issue we faced when we were doing that was the availability of local data. So there is a bit of work that needs to be done to build this data and the data sets. I really appreciated the comment on public infrastructure for data sets that was made earlier. I think it's extremely relevant for the Global South. The second comment I'll make is that today, most of AI and AI platforms are designed in a language that is not our language. I mean, the majority of what people call the Global South speak different languages, and so we need to make sure that the new platforms and the new systems that are designed in local language, because by designing them in local language, we can have better participation and also relevant data sets, because that's also the issue, is that, if you build something that seems a bit foreign, then it's extremely difficult. The one comment that was made has also to do with culture, to make sure that the data sets represented our culture. And so I'm saying that because if in the future AI platforms will represent reality or will represent the totality of knowledge, we have to make sure that our cultures are also represented in these platforms. And I think that the summit with India, and India is well known to have such a diverse, culture within the 1.2 billion, population. So I think that India can really be a huge driver to making sure that, there is a diversity in culture. The third thing I would say is that one thing that is extremely important for us in Togo is to make sure that we are part of the solution. So enough, and I think you've heard it everywhere, that the Global South does not want to be just consumer. So what it means is that we need more alliances or programs to fund research. Research on the continent, researchers, joint programs of research. I know that we had conversations, and many countries had conversations with India and other places to send researchers, to fund research, and so on. So research programs are going to be extremely important in this new world, and also shared infrastructure, because we did mention that we lack GPUs and other things, and that we didn't have enough data centers. So it means that we need to build new programs, new models where we share infrastructure. And I think that we need to build a business case and new business models that take that reality into account. And again, I'm looking to India, saying that these types of outcomes need to be discussed during the summit, which kind of models that we need to build so that we can make sure that the Global South is part of this new world. The last comment I'll make, and it's an important one, has to do with training. How do we design the new training programs? Because we do realize that we have a training issue, we have a skills issue, but this talent training, we need to have conversations about effective talent training. And I think that there's not a lot of investment being made at the global level with regards to training talent, and without us needing to send talent abroad to be trained. How do we build models and programs within the continent and within the Global South, so that we improve talent training is also going to be extremely relevant. And I think that in all these, when we talk about all these issues, India is pioneering in some of these issues, and the conversations need to happen during the next summit. So the key word here is participation, training, and research, and local languages. These are all words that, are very important.
Thank you very much. So for the next speakers, one idea, one priority, how to implement some concrete pathway. Yoshi?
Okay. Thank you very much.
That's the most important.
Okay, yeah. Actually, if we want to materialize some AI application, AI services based on the concrete demands and concrete necessity of the people, maybe we need to work in multi-stakeholder way, and we need to work together to understand each other and create the AI services which respond to the concrete demands from individual users. And probably the global partnership on AI GPay would be one of the good forums to realize a multi-stakeholder approach. And also India Summit will be also another opportunity. We are also running the Hiroshima Process Friends Group, where the many developing countries are joining, and also we work together with AI companies and businesses, and also international organizations such as OECD or UNESCO to understand and create the new values through AI services. So we must have many opportunities to realize materialize the multi-stakeholder approach into the on-the-ground services or on-the-ground AI application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maria Grazia.
So actually, I think we should move, now that it seems to agree, we agree on the what, we should move to the whom and the how. Because if we really want impact, we need to know who's around the table and how we do things. The other thing is to move from fixing the problems ex post to having ethical by design, and ethical means that abides by human rights, human dignity, and fundamental freedoms, because everything becomes much easier then. And then also the other thing that I think is important in order to move towards the impact is to move beyond a biased data type of approach, whereby we think that if we fix the data to start with, the rest will come with it. Well, because there are a number of inequalities, there might be a number of challenges that emerge by the time we deploy the AI systems in the real world. And so moving from having a suitable design, a good implementation, but checking after, as we do with any other product, I think it's fundamental to make sure that AI responds to what our societal needs. I'm trying to be very disciplined here.
And you were. Thank you very much. So I'm going online now, and I'm going back to Paris. Audrey, your main idea?
Well, I think the main thing I would offer at this point is to join us at the Global Partnership on AI to advance on some of these topics. And with that, I'll probably save you a lot of time to get through the other speakers. But there's a lot of really exciting work happening. It's founded on the OECD AI principles, which are familiar to everyone. And that community is driving forward on topics like deploying AI in agriculture, working on AI in transport systems. And so I invite you all to come work with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are coming back to Caribbean region. Andrea?
Okay, so I'm going to choose my top two, even though I have maybe 5. So until we progress to becoming producers of the AI products, we remain first and foremost consumers. So we need to understand that. And as consumers, we have a vested interest in how these technologies are built, governed, and applied. We need to understand that, first of all, we're consumers at the moment. We will progress to being producers, but until then, we remain consumers. And that is why the Global South must use our collective strength. We must use our collective voices to ensure that we advocate for inclusive, transparent, and accountable AI governance frameworks. Then the second thing is we need to start to develop and invest in local data ecosystems. Data rights, all that sort of stuff, we need to ensure that our peoples have the knowledge and the skills to retool and to upscale. So those are my top 2, and I'll pass it on to Sharad for brevity.
Thank you very much. Sharad?
I mentioned some points last time, but I'll share another learning that we've had. But to place it in context, today, India will do more than 50% of the world's digital transactions. These are not just commerce transactions. These are direct benefit transfer transactions, which the poor people in India rely on to get their benefits from the government. And those benefits, of course, come from our taxpayers. This also includes the tax-paying transactions. And again, India leads in that. More than 50% of the world's tax-paying transactions by volume happen in India. And so therefore, all this has happened since 2012. You know why? Because many reasons, techno-legal, DPI, and stuff like that. But in addition to that, as Henri knows, we were relentlessly focused on this persona that we had to take care of. And that was a street vendor called Rajni. Some of you may have seen those slides, right? And by being relentlessly focused on that street vendor for the past 13 years, it kept us focused, determined to be able to solve this problem that we're talking about. Now, when it comes to AI, we are gravitating to picking on young adults as our focus area. Because young adults, while the AI may lift them and make them better students, but it has also the potential to have an enormously destructive effect on their lives. They may lose their cultural moodings. They may get distracted by pornography. they may get distracted by gambling and gaming. You know, there are a number of concerns that arise when it comes to child safety. And adult safety is important, when I would say child safety is super important. And it is also important from this sovereignty perspective. Is each country perpetuating the culture to these young children that are going to be, you know, living digitally and using AI systems? So that is our focus. And I would suggest that this ought to be a global focus, not just an India focus, not just a global South focus. It ought to be a global focus. And if we now rally around this and measure ourselves and say, are we making progress in protecting our children while we empower them with AI? I think we will have more flexibility in deciding what works, what doesn't work, because that will be the touchstone. If it's not working, let's try something else to make progress over the next 10, 15 years. So this would be my submission to all of you.
Thank you, Sharad. So thanks all of you, because you did save time, so I can ask the same question to Abhishek. Then we'll take a few questions. So if you are new in the IGF system, I tell you, if you want to ask a question, you go in line after the first speaker, and then Abhishek, you will conclude completely. So your 2 points regarding concrete outcome.
Yeah, like what we need to do, like a lot has already been spoken, and I would say that if I have to list what we need to do individually as countries, in India, of course, our focus is to build in voice-enabled services so that we use the technology of AI, NLP, and Gen AI to empower those who are not part of the digital ecosystem. As a community, as a group of nations, that we are working together, what we need to do is that can we create a framework in which we enable access to compute, to data sets and algorithms to larger countries of the global south. And how to do it? If we can build repositories of AI solutions, like we came up with the global DPI repository, like DPI solutions which can be shared across nations as an outcome of the G20 summit that we hosted. Similarly, can we create a repository of AI applications across sectors which can be shared with different countries and they can be adopted and deployed. For example, if we have an AI-based application to diagnose cancer or diagnose tuberculosis or help farmers, they will have use cases across geographies, across countries. Even though one country has developed it, but it can be deployed elsewhere. So repository of AI-based applications will be one of my wishes that we should work together. And similarly, another thing that is required, like we all talk about data sets. And when we talk about data sets, anonymization, privacy preservation becomes equally important. So can we develop tools which can be shared across countries? Can we kind of fast forward the development of datasets platform, enabling data sharing within various stakeholders, not only within our own countries, but globally? If we are able to build that framework, Sharad mentioned about the DAY1 framework that we have, so that can have an application for global data sharing protocols, and that would really, really fast forward building AI applications and models across the world. So I would conclude by saying that these are my wish lists within India about voice-based services, and as a global community, building repository of AI applications and tools for enabling data sharing and building applications.
Thank you, Abhishek. So I'm supposed to be the moderator, so I don't contribute. Maybe my 2 cents, I just mentioned that the utmost importance of public research and common knowledge. We need to have a common knowledge for humankind, and we need to empower public research too. Not just this, but too. So please, we have 3 questions, if I'm correct.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Martina Legala-Malakova. I'm president at GaiaX Hub Slovakia. I'm vice chair at SME committee at business at OECD, and I am also MAC 2024. My question is exactly to you, Mr. Henry Verdier. It's pity that you are not a speaker today, a very good speaker often. So I don't know if you heard this idea from Joseph Gordon-Levitt, we shared today about that several companies earn money on our data, and they should give back this money or this benefits what they have to us as a citizen, and maybe also to SMEs. my question is, in principle, I agree with this idea, but I don't know how to do it because it could change completely all the economy or the system. So my question is, do you have this idea? Do you have how to do it in the world, this model? Thank you.
Complex question, and I'm not supposed to be a speaker. In a nutshell, we have an experience with social network. They did take some advertising revenue, and they did weaken a bit the ecosystem of media. If we had asked those companies to pay us, it would have been, I don't know, 2 or 3 euros a year. That's not a lot compared to the benefits they do and the negative externalities they generate. So it might be useful, and especially, that's why I did mention for the press, for example, for some content producers, it cannot be a global solution to finance the global development of humankind. But that's an interesting point. Please, second question, for a real speaker.
It actually follows on from what the last question was asked. So my name is Deanne Hewitt-Mills, and I run a Global Data Protection Office consultancy. So essentially, we have responsibility for overseeing data protection, cyber, AI compliance for large multinationals. And I was actually we're sort of UK-based, but we're global. So I'm here in Norway, actually launching our Nordics branch. And I was actually one of the first data protection officers to attain what's called the B Corp standard. And B Corp, as I say, the office is based in the UK. It's a standard where organizations have demonstrated high levels in ESG, so environmental, social governance. And what we have to do is demonstrate that we're a business that's a force for good. So you actually have to attest to what you've done to make a positive social impact and actually have a report that sets this out on a yearly basis, and then you're renewed every 3 years. And I've done this because I really believe in using business as a force for good. And I think actually it would be a great thing if many other organizations, because I'm not a large tech business with deep pockets, but I've seen the social impact that I've been able to have. And I think, other organizations could be made to do the same. I'm really pleased to see all the women on this panel, because I think if you actually invest in women and invest in women-owned businesses, and then also have a structure where businesses are required to demonstrate their social impact, I think there's a lot that can be done to improve governance in this space. So it's actually just a recommendation based on a real-life case, which is the example of what I have done as a business owner.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question, but does someone want to answer? Or? Please.
I just would like to point to something that you pointed to perhaps implicitly, and this trust, which is really fundamental for all the business of AI. And also for the data, because if we don't trust now with all the regulations that we have, that finally try to protect us and say, look, you might want to take yes or no to giving this data, we will get more and more patchy data sets that in order to build AI on is going to be really challenging. You will have to do, and I mean, we know, there was someone talking before about AGI, but for instance, let's talk about synthetic content. Let's talk about how to use it in a decent way for a good reason, for instance, to fix patchy data in order to have representative data sets. So it all goes about, in my mind, also the trust that we need to have consensus, you were mentioning, Henry, that is about let's leverage the technology in the way we want. And again, because it actually does good to the technology and the businesses themselves, and that's what you were actually pointing to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nupur Chunchunwala. I run a foundation that unlocks the potential of neurodiverse individuals globally. We work with governments on this, and today I've heard a lot about inclusion and diversity. Unfortunately, it's only in the context of the South or language and culture, but I think a good reminder is that humans are diverse. We have an aging population, over 10% that's going to get impacted. We have, of course, gender. We have ability in terms of disabilities that are coming on, and a large population of neurodiverse individuals. Latest data on Gen Z is 53% of Gen Z identify as being neurodiverse. these groups, if not included in the AI revolution, will have a big we will have a big issue of divide that goes beyond the global south or language. I think, I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment, but how do you include them in the conversations on international cooperation, the SDG goals, impact on children, because AI is also rewiring their brains. We see a lot around the anxious generation and their mental health, employability. So
I don't know who wants to answer. Online, someone online? 1, 2, 3. Someone in the room?
I don't want to monopolize this conversation, but it's true that at UNESCO we do have a full program about inclusiveness of people with disabilities, from sport to AI, so that it's addressed from many points of view. And actually, going towards the starting of your questions, that is about neurodiversity. Yes. UNESCO, perhaps you don't know, but UNESCO in the UN system is tasked with dealing with the ethics of new technologies, hence the work on AI and what it brought us today. And the latest recommendation that has been worked on is about neurotechnologies and the impact they have on rights, on the people, on, again, what society wants them to do or not to do. And the special attention is also put at the crossroad between AI and neurotech, because that's where the biggest impact may be on societies. So there are ways of actually bringing into the conversation these different aspects. And when we say inclusivity, we say inclusivity 360 degrees.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will let Abhishek conclude our work, but just to mention, I will quote you, Minister, but I will quote Thomas too. Thomas spoke about the optimist divide. And I remember you told me once, in the North, you are pretty sure that you will have some benefits from AI. So you try to fix the problems, risk, etc. We are not sure so far that we will benefit from AI enough. So that's maybe the difference, and that's why we did design this event today regarding this divide. And yes, we know and we respect that there are a lot of other divides, but this one is very important and has to be considered as itself. We have more than 3 minutes, Abhishek, to thank you for this initiative and to let you conclude our work.
No. I must thank you all. Thank you, especially Henri, for moderating it so beautifully. In fact, I was initially thinking that we have 10 speakers. How would you manage? But you did it beautifully. You got everyone to contribute. And the thoughtful contributions that came from all of you, and especially all the panelists, different perspectives from all over. It was very, very useful, very relevant, and we have given us a lot of inputs as we frame the themes for the AI Impact Summit. Over the last 90 minutes, we not only kind of identified the various barriers, various obstacles, what needs to be fixed for moving ahead on the AI story that limits equitable access to AI, but we also found opportunities, identified solutions, identified interventions that can help shape us a future where AI will truly work for everyone. One very important message that was also came out in the discussions today, especially with the references to the Friends, the Hiroshima process, the UNESCO's efforts, the OECD, the GPA efforts, the UN efforts, is that there is an urgent need for inclusive multilateralism, one that listens to and is shaped by experiences of the global majority. How do we ensure that countries of the global south also become part of the conversations at every forum, whether we make them the efforts which are made to make GPA more inclusive, the efforts to involve the developing countries in the Hiroshima process, the UNESCO's work on ethics, or the UN's efforts to kind of bring together consensus with the Global Digital Compact initiative. So this also, we also heard about the importance of addressing the gaps in access to infrastructure. How do we ensure culturally grounded data sets? How do we enable cross-border cooperation? And above all, how do we move from high-level commitments to real actionable pathways? That becomes very, very important. And as we mentioned right in the beginning, this event we had planned with IGF and support from Henri as a precursor to the AI Impact Summit, which we will host in February 2026. And the ideas which I shared today will become part of the themes, as I mentioned, as we move forward. And I look forward to involving you as we develop the concept notes and the themes and we curate the sessions. This dialogue will continue through a participatory and transparent process, including when we plan the sessions of the May Summit, we'll be doing public consultations, we'll be doing online meetings, we'll have working groups which will work with in the collaborative spirit, and we'll have an open call for side events. We'll look forward to various entities, whether they're from the government or civil society or multilateral bodies or important stakeholders who hold side events during the summit. We invite all of you to stay connected, engaged as co-creators for the journey as we plan the summit in February. On behalf of Government of India and the India AI Mission, I would once again like to thank the IGF Secretariat, the Government of Norway, and our distinguished moderator, Ambassador Henri Verdier, each of our speakers on Her Excellency the Minister, Yochi, Maria, Amandeep, Sharad, Audrey, for joining us today and making this session so meaningful and rich in substance. We look forward to building on this momentum and seeing most of you at the AI Summit in February next year. Thank you, and look forward for the remaining sessions of the IGF here. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
On time.